Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast Tax Moves with Glen Birnbaum. Glen, a lot of stuff going on that time of the year where there's a lot of tax moves taking place, I guess, if you will. So, how things in your office, and what's the temperature of the folks out there right now?
Well, yeah, we just had an all-day training session yesterday, for all of our people here, our CPA staff, going over a lot of the new rules. So we've been really busy, just keeping up on things. We've been talking about this the last few times. Hey, eventually they're going to release these new rules, proposed regulations they're coming upon, the interest deductibility rules. So for the first time, really for most private companies, we've never had to worry about interest being non-deductible. And this year, basically, if interest is more than 30% of your EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, or EBITDA, you may have to carry over some of that interest to next year. So it's a pretty new set of rules. Here's the rules right here, Casey. These are actually printed on double-sided, so there's actually 439 pages. These came out on Monday.
Not very many then. That's good.
Not very many, so pretty simple reading.
Right.
Now, the important thing is if you're under 25 million revenues, jobs, that's a very large threshold. You do not have to follow these interest rules in general. We talked about this, I think it was back in July 27th, if my memory serves. We touched on these. Again, these are further implications, details that the Treasury and the IRS come out with. So Congress just kind of says the basics, here's the basics, and Treasury gets to write detailed rules. So these rules finally came out, and unfortunately, they did not provide any more amplification on this concept of a tax shelter, which you might remember, Casey, we talked about this back in July. That
Right.
Generally speaking, if you're under 25 million, you don't have to worry about this unless you're a tax shelter. And a tax shelter is not what you think it is. A tax shelter basically is that if you have a loss during the year, so that's what most people believe, if you have a loss during the year, and if more than 35% of the losses are allocated to somebody who's not active in the business, then you would have to follow these rules, even if you were under 25 million. So still may not come into play a whole lot of farming clients, but definitely could be a bigger issue, for other types of clients. So in looking at it deeper, if my dad was still involved in the business and he was not active, that generally wouldn't be a problem if he was a 35% owner. But if my grandpa was still involved, had an ownership interest more than 35%, that could be a problem. So it's a lot of steps. I've got to have a loss. We got to have more than 35% being an active owner. So general rule of thumb, probably not going to come into too much play. But just keep in mind, you could be considered a tax shelter, have to worry about these rules. And we went through an example again back on that July 27th podcast. So no new guidance on that. We're again hoping to get more details on what's a tax shelter. Didn't learn about that. One of the interesting things, this would not apply to farmers, but this is a potential major impact on manufacturers, is that, okay, the rule is 30% EBITDA. Right? So if my interest is less than 30% of EBITDA, I'm okay, right? And we thought, that's a lot of depreciation, for manufacturing clients. So maybe the rule actually was for the first 4 years, it's 30% of EBITDA. But then after that, it becomes 30% of EBIT, which means only earnings before interest and taxes. So actually, down the road, as part of that kind of sunset provisions, right? It's how they made the bill only cost 1.5 trillion by later on it being 30% of EBIT. So a tougher threshold to meet, right? You're more likely to be limited on your interest if you don't get to add back depreciation. So long story, but these rules came out again, 439 pages, and they say that, well, for manufacturing clients, you do not actually get to add back depreciation if it's considered part of your inventory cost. You're building equipment, and that depreciation just becomes part of the cost, and with your labor, your materials, and it becomes part of inventory. And then you would actually not get to add back EBITDA. So sorry, you would not get to add back depreciation. So the bottom line for manufacturing plants, even if you're over this 25 million threshold, is it's actually going to be 30% of EBIT because you can't add back depreciation. So these are just proposed regulations. People are going to, I think, fight that pretty hard, but I'm hearing that the IRS has got a decent case to make because it's really not depreciation once it becomes part of the cost of doing. So you could really then only add back depreciation. It's like maybe part of your office, right? Your general administrative costs. There's depreciation on that, right? The computers that you have, for your HR department, your accounting department, right? Your finance department. That could be added back, but your core production depreciation for a manufacturer may not be able to be added back. So it could be a real issue, and it's a surprise again because we thought we knew what the rule was. Now it's changed.
Okay. So there's a lot of stuff going on this year. I mean, there seems like there's just a lot of activity on the equipment side of the business where we're at right now. I mean, a lot of guys are looking at updating their equipment. They have, ran the stuff to the ground basically, and now it's time to either make a pretty good investment in repairs or make that same investment in a new machine. So, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
On that end, if I wanted to take a look at updating a piece of equipment, how have the tax laws changed for that? I mean, I know we've talked about it a few times, but we've got
it's a good reminder because this law was passed back in December, and so it's almost a year old now. But just as a reminder, depreciation, they really did increase a lot of rules. You can now write off depreciation. It's called Section 179 expense, but you can write off $1 million of equipment under Section 179. It's called. But the big thing is that bonus depreciation used to only be for new equipment. You could 100% write off something new. Now, for the first time in 2018, we can now 100% write off used equipment. No limits on that. There's no $1 million cap on it whatsoever. So, the biggest companies in the world can write off 100% equipment. Now, the other change, and this is important, if you don't elect to take this faster write-off, right, and you just want to depreciate it over the standard life, in 2017, the rule was you depreciate it over 7 years, and it was actually a little bit slower. It's called a 150% declining balance, which we don't have time to get into that, but it's the way in which the depreciation is claimed over the 7 years. So that was just, hey, farm equipment is 7 years, 150 declining balance. That was, everyone knew that. It's been that way for quite a while. Now, in 2018, it's actually 5 years. So it goes from 7 down to 5, so that's helpful. And it's also a little bit faster. It's 200% declining balance, so you basically get to depreciate a little quicker in some of those early years. So it's now 5 years instead of 7. But it's we can't make this too simple. That 5-year rule is only for new farm equipment. So if you buy new farm equipment, and again, you don't want to write it off in the first year, it's going to be a 5-year life. But if you buy used farm equipment in 2018, it's still going to be the 7-year life. So you have to make sure you communicate, with the tax person, hey, is this new or used? It's only going to be 7 years still if it's used. Simple.
Yeah. Nothing there to get confused at all. Makes perfect sense.
Even,
very fluid.
We're, and even our software, that it isn't always up to speed on some of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just it's just a box, right, or a checkbox, if somebody doesn't code it right.
Yeah.
Look, that was kind of under the cover of darkness. Not sure why they did it that way, but that is the rule. Used equipment is going to be still 7.
Right on. Well, plenty of stuff to go on right now. Plenty of things happening out there in the world. Glenn, if guys want to reach out and ask some tax questions or just get some help overall with what they have going on, how would they do that?
Yeah, here, it's best just to call our office at Heinel Fanworks. Our phone number is 309-694-4251. I definitely, would encourage, people to call. It doesn't have to be me. Obviously, call your advisor, somebody, because communication is important here this last month. And then you can also always look me up on Twitter at Glen Birnbaum. Generally try to keep a few things cooking there with some of the recent things that have been released. So lots of ways to reach out to me. Glad to talk to anyone on any issues that you might be encountering.
Right on. Well, Glenn, appreciate that, man. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, Casey, thanks.
Thank you.